Hello. I really like what Simon Sinek says. Leadership is not about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in your charge. This quote resonates deeply with me because I've experienced both exceptional leadership and not so good leadership, both as an army officer as well as a surgeon in the NHS. I am Major Munish Chauhan, a general surgeon in the British Army and a senior research fellow at the Center for Army Leadership. Beyond surgery, I am deeply involved in leadership coaching with a focus on resilience, insight, and metacognition. I think these are the key tools that help individuals in their self leadership journey. Leadership is surgery is not just about making clinical decisions. It's about managing high pressure situations, guiding teams effectively, and fostering psychological safety. The reality, however, is that leadership in surgical training is struggling, and it's costing us not just good trainees, but also the future of surgical care itself in the NHS. The NHS is at a critical point. Burnout, attrition, and lack of mentorship are forcing talented surgeons to leave training. Many feel unsupported and undervalued, and I will share some hard statistics shortly to show just how deep this issue runs. But beyond the numbers, this is about people. It's about the next generation of surgeons, the doctors who are passionate, skilled, and committed, but often lack the leadership support that they need to succeed. And that's why we need to talk about leadership in surgery and resilience development, not just as a theoretical concept, but as a real practical skill that every trainee, consultant, and leader must develop. But before we get into that, let me share a little about my own journey. I did not come from privilege. I grew up in a small village in India where opportunities were very limited, resources were even scarce. Although I received education in a village school, it was something that I had to fight for every day. The caste-based discrimination and bullying was a common thing in my childhood. And from an early age, I learned that hard work and perseverance were the only way forward. But when I moved to the UK at the age of 17, I faced challenges that tested me beyond anything that I had experienced before. Within 2 weeks of coming to the UK, I had nowhere to live and had to sleep in a park because I simply could not afford the rent. I worked menial jobs, such as laborer in factories, doing whatever I could do to survive. But I knew that survival alone was not enough. I had a vision and a purpose. That drive led me to join the British Army as a soldier, where I found some structure and discipline and a new path forward. Today, I stand here as the only Indian born surgeon in the British Army. But even this journey in the army was not without struggles. There were many who doubted me, few who showed some interest in my journey, and only a handful who truly supported me. But this isn't just about personal success. It's about showing what's possible when you refuse to let circumstances define you. Later in this talk, I'll come back to this journey and discuss the key lessons I learned about resilience and leadership. Lessons that are essential for every surgical trainee navigating the demanding world of NHS surgery. More importantly, I will share how we can build resilience in our future surgeons, ensuring they not only survive but thrive in the profession. Because resilience isn't just about enduring hardship, it's about growing through the challenges. And leadership is all about making sure that no one else has to face the challenges alone. Let's start with the leadership challenges in the NHS surgical training. Leadership in surgical training is supposed to be about guidance, mentorship, and professional development. But too often, it feels like a barrier rather than a supporting system. Many trainees feel unsupported, unheard, undervalued, and the numbers back this up. According to the NHS Workforce Survey 2022, 68% of doctors feel unsupported by their leadership. According to the GMC National Training Survey 2022, burnout among surgical trainees is at 43%. That's quite high. Attrition rates in surgical training are increasing, not because trainees lack ability, but because they lack mentorship, strong leadership, and psychological safety. And the problem is the leadership gaps in surgery. One of the biggest failures in surgical leadership is poor communication and a rigid hierarchy. Instead of encouraging discussion, too many senior surgeons shut down the input from trainees. And I have experienced this firsthand. I want to share a small story with you. I was assisting a consultant in theatre doing a difficult case. At one stage in the operation, I had a better view of the anatomy from my side. And I suggested that to the consultant. I suggested a slightly different approach that could make the operation smoother. This is something that's expected of me as a registrar. But instead of discussing the options and the view of the anatomy from my side, the consultant snapped. He said, "How many of these have you done before?" I was taken aback. I was intending to be helpful and engage in the operation for a better outcome for the patient. This wasn't about questioning his experience as a consultant. It was about teamwork. But I knew this was a challenging operation, and knowing the criticality of the moment, I decided not to discuss this any further. So I chose to stay silent and let him continue. For the next hour, we didn't speak a word to each other. Now let's break this down. Was I trying to prove a point? No. I was trying to be helpful by making a suggestion. Was I trying to undermine him? Absolutely not. I know the fact that he's a consultant, he's more experienced than me. I was communicating for patient safety and better outcome, which is what we are all trained to do. It's a responsibility that I take seriously as a doctor. But his ego and hierarchy overpowered a collaboration. And that's where surgical leadership is failing. I will repeat this. Ego and hierarchy is failing the surgical leadership. By reacting defensively, the consultant failed to recognize his emotions and also mine, which created an unnecessary barrier between us. This not only impacted the team dynamic, but also wasted valuable time and energy, something we cannot afford in surgery. So what's the missing piece? It's the emotional intelligence in leadership. The consultant in this situation didn't just shut down a conversation. He created an environment where communication became a risk. It was noticed by the rest of the theatre team as well, including the scrub nurse, theatre sister, anesthetist, and the ODPs. This is where emotional intelligence is critical in leadership. As a leader, it's important to have the right level of self-awareness, situational awareness, and empathy. The self-awareness about understanding how our emotions impact our decision-making and reactions. The situational awareness about reading the room around us, knowing when to engage in discussions. And empathy. Empathy about listening to others and valuing different perspectives. We don't have to take the suggested path, but we must acknowledge the options suggested and discuss them. Instead of reacting defensively, a good leader would have used that moment to discuss, teach, and strengthen the team's decision-making process. And this isn't just my experience. This is a common culture problem in surgery. So how do we fix this? There are a few leadership models that are applicable in surgery. First of all, leadership in surgery must be about empowering and not intimidating. The first leadership model that I'm going to talk about is the servant leadership model. As an army officer, I'm a strong believer of serve to lead, which is the motto of the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst. As Robert Greenleaf said, as a leader, you should aim to empower your team, helping them succeed rather than focusing solely on a personal goal. A good surgical leader should create an environment where training is encouraged and every voice is valued. Because in surgery, the best decision can come from anyone in the room. The best cricket batsman in the world, Sachin Tendulkar, once took a suggestion from a waiter in a hotel room about his bat swing. This shows true excellence comes from being open, humble, and willing to listen. Another leadership model that's applicable in surgery is John Adair's Action Center leadership model. This highlights three essential components: task, team, and the individual. The task to achieve the surgical goal, which is successful patient outcome. The team to foster collaboration and psychological safety within the theatre environment. And individual to develop every team member's confidence and skills. If the consultant in my story had followed this model, he would have seen that I wasn't challenging his authority. I was contributing to the team. He let ego override the task. And this is a fundamental leadership failure. So here's a call for action from the NHS leaders. If you want to develop future surgical leaders, you must change this culture. We need mentorship, not intimidation. We need collaborations, not hierarchy. We need psychological safety, not fear of speaking up. Because in the end, surgical leadership isn't about who knows more. It's about how we work together for the best outcome for our patients. I strongly believe that leadership in surgery is not just about technical skills. It's about making critical decisions under pressure, managing teams effectively, and fostering a culture of psychological safety. In the operating theatre, a surgeon is not simply a technician, they are a leader. Their decisions affect not just the patient on the table, but the entire surgical team. And those decisions are often made in the most high pressure environments, where the margin for error is small and the consequences are life altering. A surgeon's scalpel is guided not just by skills, but the sound judgment and leadership. But here is the truth: technical ability alone is not enough. To be a truly effective surgical leader, you need resilience. So let's switch our focus to why resilience is critical in surgical leadership. Surgical leadership is demanding. Every day brings unexpected challenges: a complication in theatre, a difficult conversation with the patient and their family, or managing a fatigued team under pressure. Without resilience, these pressures accumulate, leading to burnout, poor decision making, and disengagement. Resilient leaders think clearly under pressure. They adapt when things don't go as planned. They support and protect their team. And here is something crucial: resilience is not just for trainees. Consultants, senior surgeons must also develop resilience to lead with emotional intelligence, self awareness, and adaptability. Without resilience, even the most technically skilled leaders can lose trust of their team members. And in surgery, trust saves lives. So we must focus on building resilience as a surgical trainee. Resilience is not a personality trait. It's not something we are born with. It's a skill that we develop. We build it brick by brick, task by task, every day. So how do we build resilience in an environment as tough as surgical training? Reflective practice. Take time to evaluate experiences. What went well, what didn't, and how to improve. Reflection isn't just about looking back, it's about learning forward. Peer support. Surround yourself with colleagues who understand the pressure of surgical life. A supportive team reduces the emotional burden and helps you process difficult experiences. Seeking mentorship. Find experienced surgeons who offer guidance rather than criticism. A good mentor doesn't just teach technical skills, they teach how to cope, recover, and grow. A framework that can be used for resilience is Kobasa's hardiness model, which focuses on three essential traits that help individuals thrive under pressure: commitment, control, and challenge. Commitment. Stay engaged in your training and your purpose, even when things get difficult. Commitment keeps you grounded in why you do this work. Number two, control. Focus on what you can influence. In surgery, you can't control every outcome, but you can control your perception, your mindset, and your reaction to it. Challenges. See obstacle as an opportunity for growth, not as a threat. Every difficult case, every setback, there are chances to get better. Resilient leaders use these principles not only to protect their own well-being, but also to create an environment where their teams can thrive. One of the most powerful tools for building resilience in surgery is metacognition, the ability to think about your thinking. Why is this important? Because self-awareness is the foundation for resilience and leadership. Metacognition can help surgical leaders to identify their emotional responses in high-pressure situations, adjust their thinking when faced with setbacks, and make decisions by reflecting on the past experiences and learning from them. And the best part, our brains are adaptable. Through neuroplasticity, we can continue to develop our metacognitive abilities that allows us to become more self-aware, more adaptable, and more resilient over time. I think resilience is a leadership responsibility. When we talk about building resilience in surgical trainees, we are also talking about building better surgical leaders for the NHS. Leaders who can model resilience in how they respond to pressure. Leaders who can teach resilience by creating supportive environment. Leaders who can protect resilience by advocating for systems that prioritize well-being and psychological safety. Resilience is not just a personal journey. It's a professional responsibility for anyone and everyone leading a surgical team. So in conclusion, surgical leadership is not just about technical skills. It's more than that. It's about creating an environment where both surgeons and their teams can thrive. The NHS is facing a crisis in surgical training. Burnout, attrition, and a lack of psychological safety are pushing talented trainees out of the profession. If we want to build a strong future for surgery, we must shift our focus. Leadership must evolve from rigid hierarchy to mentorship and collaborations. Resilience must be developed, not just in individuals, but as a core part of surgical culture. Metacognition must be encouraged because self aware surgeons make better decisions, lead more effectively, and build stronger teams. The best surgeons are not just the most technically skilled, they are the ones who lead with insight, adapt to challenges, and inspire the next generation of surgeons. So, my final message is this: lead yourself, support those around you, and never stop striving for growth. Because the strongest leaders aren't those who never struggle, they are the ones who rise every time they fall. Thank you for listening.